largest platform in the world, were largely from South India. And so when they came up to build the station, they needed someplace to pray. So they built a temple. They built a temple in South Indian style. So it's a South Indian temple in West Bengal. And so it took a while to put all of this together, but we finally did. And then online, we found this.
And this was at the AIS Kolkata archive, and we were just moving along,
right,
jumping up and down.
People who have not worked in archives sometimes think of archivists as dour and serious, people. Forget it. Once we hit this, everyone was yelling and screaming like, yes, yes, success, success, we found it.
It was an absolutely fantastic moment.
That's the 1945 image. Oh, it's also done on May 3rd. How about that? And there it is today.
This is it here now.
It's 1945, and a friend in Chicago pointed out, looking at this the first time, said, "Isn't that Gandhi in the corner?" That's kind of unusual for a temple. So that also convinced us that this was a modern temple. That's right. We have a pointer. That's right. And here it is today. But when we first got there, we were very confused because everything looked right, but some things didn't look right. This wall behind these men was not right. So we were totally disoriented until we found out. They said, oh yeah, we took down all the idols on that wall and we put up new ones. Oh, about 2 months ago, actually. It's like, great. But the amazing thing that happened is while we were there and while we were showing people the book, a man came up and he said, oh, that's my great-grandfather.
And on the bottom it says an old priest at Village Temple, which is where the Balaji Temple.
That's where the Balaji Temple.
Here he is. This is the great-grandson of the founding priest of the Balaji Temple.
His name is A. Narayan Swami Naidu, and he founded the temple in 1935, and our photograph was made just 10 years after he founded the temple. It was amazing. I mean, we had always dreamed we'd find somebody. We always thought it'd be, our quest is still that little girl with the jug. She's got to be in her 70s. She's got to be around somewhere. We kept asking everybody, do you recognize her? Have you seen her? No luck yet. But that is his great-grandson. And then he said, oh, why don't you come by tomorrow? We'll get some of the elders together, including his daughter-in-law.
And this is the woman. She's the wife of this priest's second son.
Padmavati is her name. And she was very emotional when we gave her a copy of the print. It's her father-in-law from a long time ago.
And then our dynamic duo was looking through the book, and I said something about, it says here laundry, and we had read this on the side, Salur, S-A-L-U-R, and they said, no, that's not Salur, that's Salua, and that's right down the street here, and there's an air base, which of course we almost passed out, we couldn't believe it, and we said, we know where that laundry is. So, and this is one of the photographs that was taken.
So we were told, oh, well, that's at an Air Force base. Well, you can't go there.
Well, we did.
We tend not to take no for an answer. So we figured, well, we'll just go. What are they going to do? What's the worst that can happen? Well, actually, I don't want to think about what the worst that can happen might be. But we went, and we managed to get through various layers and managed to get in to talk to, not the commander, but several people who was out of town. But several people there, and everybody was fascinated by this album because they were convinced that this was indeed their air base.
And they had been hearing rumors for many, many years that there was an American presence there, but they had absolutely no proof at all. And so they were really very excited to see these photos because now there is proof that there was an American presence.
And actually, when we were looking and doing the research, the month of May 1945, it kind of disappeared. We couldn't find anything. So it was kind of peculiar. But now we have a different, now that we learned something, which we'll tell you in a moment, I think we'll be able to solve the mystery. But we kept looking at these pictures and thinking that was the airfield. Well, the soldiers said, no, that's just a parade ground.
And That could be
It
anywhere.
could be anywhere. So
That could be anywhere in India.
So really, it doesn't make any sense focusing on that. It does make sense focusing on things like this. And we had several pictures of road construction, and when we took out those pictures, people started identifying trees and walls and areas of the camp.
And this is the hat. So this is a Gurkha soldier from 1945 on the left, obviously, and one now. And they took us to this one area, to the air base, and this is a railway platform that they had to link one air base to another.
So they actually had tracks, and they had a station, and now it's all buried, it's all gone. But this area here, the young man who took us around, he said, this is a place that's full of mystery. He said, nobody really knows what exactly happened here. And he said, which is really very touching, he said, nobody knows the role that India played in World War II. He knows.
This is a vehicle repair, they call it vehicle repair platform order.
Well, I mean, the point is that there was a railroad presence there that linked this to the Kolkata Air Base. This is Salua, and it linked to Kolkata. So, yeah, well, that's what we found. And so
can you name the location?
Can we name
This name of this
well, it's at the base at Salua, but I don't know anything beyond that. Yes, at Salua. And then we saw tank tracks that were
these
still
are
there.
actual tank tracks from, like the Allied tank tracks from 1945 that are in the tarmac, that are there embedded. And we went out into the field, and this is it's a little side story, really interesting little thing about the American Armed Services, that in 1945, the Americans, the Air Force, the military was very segregated. And we had African American soldiers and we had white soldiers. The African American soldiers were segregated from the white soldiers. The white soldiers stayed inside the fenced barracks and had nice canteens. The African American soldiers stayed outside in more rugged barracks that were out in the fields. What you see on the right here, these are ruins of bunkers where they stored ammunitions, which were right next to where the black soldiers lived. So if that ever got attacked, unfortunately, the black soldiers would be the first ones to get hit. So that's like a whole other amazing side story to it.
In the background of some of the photos, there were small mud huts, and we realized that this is the same.
So the huts this was can you just go back here? So the hut, when we were driving around the Air Force Base, I see these huts like all over the place, but I just wanted to photograph one of the huts around the Air Force Base because it just reminded me of a photograph from 1945 that perhaps that was also on the Air Force Base. I don't know. It was the same kind of fencing, the same kind of hut. And now here, this is something really very interesting. These are two photographs that we have that show right there is an American soldier, and the next one also right here is the American soldier in the background. The title is Mud Hut Builders. And so, which was really also amazing trying to figure out who this man was, because he had the liberty to travel wherever he wanted. At one point we thought he would have been just a regular private GI, but then when we showed these to a man who was part of a military family, he says, no, that's not possible. Because he had this kind of freedom to travel, he must be an officer. So again, that started like narrowing down, perhaps who this person was.
This was at the museum at the campus of IIT, the Nehru Museum of Science and Technology. And then is Arnab Hazra, the director of the museum, who again was incredibly helpful.
And this is the tower that is now the IIT, and he had some literature in his archives, and we were reading in the literature that the Hidgley detention center, which was a detention center that was where the British housed freedom fighters in the 40s, were the U.S. Air Force was looking for a spot that would have been secluded, away from crowds, where there would be a dense forest in the area, and which would be conducive for building an airfield. And they found this place, and this is what they wanted. And so the British had 24 hours to vacate the Hidgley detention center of all the prisoners, and the Americans took it over.
And apparently, the daughter of this man came and visited many years ago and brought this photograph of her father at Hidgley right there.
So, in all the literature that we've looked, and in the literature that we were looking at the archive at this museum, everything was saying we don't know very much about the American presence here at Hidgley and at Salua. It is all shrouded in secrecy. And of course, we have a theory about that, or I have a theory about that, because again, one of the rumors that one of the Gurkhas were telling us was that the rumor is that the bombers that went and bombed Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, were either stopped or took off from the Salua Air Base, which of course really is amazing to me. So
I don't think it's
not,
true.
maybe not, we don't know, but it is a rumor.
There is something going on. I mean, the research is pretty clear that they took off from Mariana Islands, but that's a whole other story.
I can add to this later.
Okay. All right. Anyway, one of the things that I wanted to do, and we have to speed this up, I think, I don't want to keep people here forever, is this is one of the temples we still don't know where it is. We're missing 2 temples. We cannot identify 2 temples. And one of the things that's happened is people will say, oh, I know where that is. And they'll send us somewhere, and it's not the right temple. So.
But we were at Pingla, and they said, oh yeah, this is where it is. And so they took us to this temple, and then when you counted the scallops, and you looked at the ribs, you counted the ribs of the temple, you found it's not quite right.
And here's people in the village, just
arguing
and discussing about it.
We became these magnets, and what was really incredible, this woman in this turquoise sari, she took the book, she went out into the field, and a whole group of people, and they were all discussing, like for a long time, they were out there discussing everything and counting the ribs, and Ellen and I were just like standing back saying, this is absolutely incredible, because this is what we really wanted.
We set it in motion, and that's it.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, these photographs are coming back to India. We want them to come back to India, because this is where they were taken.
This isn't it either.
And this isn't it either. Here's another temple that we were looking for, and found, several similar ones, similar styles.
Kind of similar, but no.
But not quite. Close, but no cigars, as they say.
And then we went to Naya Village in Pingla, and we commissioned by Swarna Kshetrakhar, who is a pretty well-known folk artist, we commissioned the creation of 2 storied scrolls based on the 1945 photographs. And so we were only going to buy one. She's a really good saleswoman. We ended up buying 2. So one of them is actually telling the story of our box. And we commissioned her. We came back a few days later. She had already written the first few verses of the accompanying song, which she sang to us about the box, which was fantastic. And then she's doing a second one she selected photos that had personal meaning to her, and she constructed a narrative. And then from that narrative, she is doing a 7-foot-long painting.
And then her brother, who was sitting at the far left, when he was looking through the photos.
There's that guy from IIT again.
Yeah, there's that guy again from IIT. I don't know, he just keeps popping up in our photos. And we were showing all the photographs and again trying to identify the locations and places of the photos. And they were saying, oh yes, these are Saul platters. And these
At Shalboni.
market up in
Shalboni.
In Shalboni.
And this, they thought the silver merchants were at the Gold Bazaar in Kiratpur, because that's the only place that would have had that kind of market at the time. And he identified this as being the Mohanpur River, at the narrowest point of the Mohanpur, where there is now a bridge.
Yeah, and this is a ferry that's going back and forth across the river, and now there's no ferry service, now there's a bridge.
These were theoretically at the market in Kharagpur that is still functioning every Sunday. And then we just put in an assortment of other images just to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we're working with. We've made certain about some of the locations of the other ones that our brother talked about, but we haven't confirmed all of them. But this is just an example of the images.
And our photographer, we knew, must have had some kind of photography experience. Just go back to the other one, Ellen. I mean, a photograph like this is not just a snapshot. This was really very, very carefully composed with that person in the middle of the fishing, net. This is a really beautiful image.
And also,
our photographer had experience prior to this as an image maker.
And it's also easy for people to forget, especially for young people. Today's cameras have built-in computers, so the exposures are perfect. Or more or less. I mean, they're pretty close. Not in those days. In those days, it was entirely up to your skill and ability. And you really had to know what you were doing. And in order to get the sky, to get everything exposed properly, it took training, it took skill. You didn't just do this in 2 minutes. Who is this man? I mean, all of these questions all raised. Where are these people? Where are these villages? So now that we know that Salur was his base, and now that we started to map out these different locations, we're pretty sure that we can hone in on exactly where these villages are. Musicians. I mean, these are not casual snapshots.